afterwards. So let's just check in and then follow on from our dialogue the last time. So I can jump in. I'm dialing in from Ireland. Good to see you all again. The intention is to help Josh and Economics 2.0 create a sustainable learning pedagogy, I would say, so that the beautiful work that he's doing, um, supporting the foundational work of Silvio Gazelle, has the best possible chance of living and surviving. And between Guri and a few others, myself and Thomas and a few others, we are practitioners of a dialogue methodology. But we are also keen to see if we can find a way to integrate Silvio's teachings into our own work. So we met a couple of weeks ago. We produced a concept document, and here we are to continue the dialogue. So I'm checking in with curiosity and commitment. Yeah, I'm here with that. How are you all? Let's check in. Guri, how are you?
Yeah, thank you. I was really impressed and was beautiful our last meeting, and it's just so nice to see that the thing you care about, others care about with the same zeal, with the same. So we see the same thing, and uh, and uh, I've been sort of mere science and radio silence because I'm so frustrated that the tooling and everything that we need to really start is doing is still not working. And not only that, the way I consume things and make sense of it, that's still not working either. So I was not ready to ingest new information, which I really love to be engaging, because I have to focus on making this the kernel, the core of the seed working, so I can actually make contribute on that and saw these things that I've been working on for so long. So that's why I haven't been around. But referring back to the previous meeting, I was very happy to share this new concept, new to most of you, was called enshittification, which is and this is the whole literature. Doctor wrote that book decade ago, and he's still updating it, and everything is turning into shit. There's a huge literature of this. Can't go into that now, but the thing that happened this week is that I found in my mail, which I don't normally scan well, there was information about the Dark Forest OS. And if you, I posted a link, I will post it here as well. Some of it I read. And basically, his whole thing he calls this project anti-enshittification. It's a pretty bad name, awful name. Uh, uh, but I'm it just so, this is now the third or fourth project that I'm now aware of who like Pyrgos 12 years ago, they started to build a system which is for user autonomy and basically by construction rules out all the things that enshittification means. So I was really happy with this because my vision was 10 years ago that that the real task is okay. We got to have these new ways of working, which is radically it so flips the web, and there are many ways of doing it, and all these have to work together. So I'm really at the meta level. I'm working on notation and everything, the conceptual framework and practical framework and bottom up, so through experiments, not trying to bottom up, top down, but actually this all this omni-optional way of working, which has these core values, which we clearly, even if we don't articulate it, I feel, I understand that we all feel the need that something is deeply wrong. So I'm really, really delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geary. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Happy to be back with you all. I'm I'm very inspired by what we spoke about last time. Like I mentioned last time, there's seems to be some real synchronicity going on with regard to this conversation because 2 days before Paul and I, first made contact a few weeks ago, I had been talking about this exact subject with Mike, who hasn't joined us yet today, but hopefully will. The challenge of how to have better, more inclusive conversations virtually, um, because that's a it's a technical matter that has been um, preventing me from starting some new projects that that I want to do the right way because I've seen so many times how just just setting off from a place of good intentions is usually not enough. Um, it usually peters out for one reason or another quite quickly. And oftentimes that's simply the logistics of the communication, given that the people who I have connected with around all of these subjects are located all around the world. It's simply logistically impossible to schedule a synchronous meeting that everyone can be a part of. And so you end up making a choice that includes some people and excludes others. And and a YouTube video is not uh, an acceptable substitute for being part of the original meeting. So so I was kicking this idea around with Mike, and he's, I was describing to him an idea for just a new format for having synchronous slash asynchronous meetings that could be ongoing and that people could come into and make and participate in a very specific focused way. Um, and then all of a sudden this configuration that I connected with through Paul materialized 48 hours after I was having this conversation. Um, just to quickly introduce Cam, and then he can introduce himself. Um, he and I connected through Economy 2.0, I think. I don't know if it was or might have been the Gasell course, but it was through the Henry George School. Um, and we quickly recognized that uh, we're on similar paths and have similar concerns and aspirations. Um, and so Cameron and I are planning collaborations both as it relates to the future of Economy 2.0 and also what I call the natural economic system, which is my attempt to create um, a, a toolkit based on Silvio Gasell's ideas for the creation of both local um, alternative economic zones and a networked architecture for linking up all of those local implementations into what could potentially become a global network. Cameron, I'll throw it to you. Tell us about your background, which is very different from mine and hopefully quite complementary.
Yeah, thank you for that starter introduction. My name is Cameron, as you said, and we met, I think, before Economy 2.0, but after the course you gave, I watched the course and reached out to you in an email trying to join the Silvio Giselle Foundation, and then that's how I ended up involved in Economy 2.0. You can see my talk last year was on the Geocybernetic Atlas Protocol, which is sort of the piece of the puzzle that I feel most inclined to make my own. And it is directly related to this. I won't necessarily try to cover all of it here, but I've seen good work in progress since then. The background question is complicated because, people answer this different ways, but I guess the way I got to Giselian and alternative economic thinking comes from my involvement in various regenerative projects, and especially I got involved early on in the world of regenerative finance with the goals of, looking at the economic system that is being reproduced in, for example, carbon credits, and saying, well, what can we actually do to make more trees instead of more kinds of money for people to speculate on or whatnot. And a long road from there led me to, this idea, especially from Giselle, of money that needs to be sort of the term of the day is biomimicry, but he didn't have that at the time, and so a personal interest of mine is enabling that kind of experimentation, and the Economy 2.0 conversation sort of bring together a lot of the heterodox thinkers, because Henry George has a good share in the English speaking world, and Giselle has a small but devoted share. And if you roll in Keynes, we have a lot of the world in the Western world of thinkers about the past, of what people have thought of in the past. And I think we need to modernize all these ideas, which is sort of where we bring technology in cautiously and carefully. So I'm very happy to be part of the conversation about the conversation, adopting technology. So it's like the first step, or the dog food step, where we can start to try out our own tools, or you know what's the word phrase, put your money where your mouth is, I guess, something like that.
Cameron, since you were not here for the first meeting, and unfortunately Mike is not yet with us to show you what he showed us last time, I want to just describe it to you because you're far more technically savvy than I am, and you might very well know of the existence already of what it is that we're trying to um, manifest. So, so I described to Mike that what I would like to have is a essentially a video recording, uh, just like what we're doing right now, um, but where the recorded version of it then becomes a becomes a file that other participants can come along and go through, and at specific timestamps where specific points or topics are being discussed, they can go in and insert their own input, and that could be in the form of text, audio, video, links. Um, so so what the goal would be to have an ongoing conversation that people can participate in as and when they're able to. Um, so I described this to Mike, and he's like, we could make that in a half an hour on AI. And we did. he is a web designer, so he does this on a daily basis, and he went in and he spoke into AI what it was we were talking about, and it made exactly what I was envisioning. And he has this prototype, and it's very basic, but it is the kernel of what I was imagining. Um, so I guess I'll ask you, Cameron, do you know of if such a thing already exists? Are we reinventing the wheel here? Is there something out there that already does this, as far as you know?
As far as I know, there's not one tool. We've sort of crossed into what several platforms or products might do. But I think this might be mostly novel. At least the crux of it of annotating a certain point in time with these pop-ups. But I could do some looking. I've never looked for anything like this specifically. It does sound like something that maybe somebody has dreamed up in an academic setting or some other, you know, one-off experiment that we might learn from. I could look for those.
And if I can come in, Cam, that's where I began to see that what Guri and Guillen's not here also, he's normally based in Cape Town in South Africa. They had introduced me to an annotation methodology called hypothesis,
Hmm.
where you
I'm
can look
familiar
at
with
it.
hypothesis and memex. Yep.
Okay. So that's how we open up this dialogue. Josh and I were talking about economics 2.0, ecosystems. We're going to practice something here in ERA, which is the ancient name for Ireland. And then when I heard Josh was looking for something, all we did was set up one call 2 weeks ago where Guri, Guillen, Thomas, and Michael, we all just got together, opened up a little bit of dialogue space, and said we would meet in 2 weeks. So we haven't agreed to do anything other than to meet today and see where we can get to. But I'm very excited by what Josh is saying. I didn't realize, Josh, that you were creating the natural economic system. I think this is something that we can learn from over here as we begin to deploy, because we're now talking to a municipality, we're talking to a construction company, we're talking to an accounting practice, and we're talking to small communities for mutual exchange systems such as what's it called? Cyclos. And we spoke with Kuhn, who we met on that call as well in the monetary diversity group. So we got some pricing from him, and we're getting ready to implement. But Cam, I have a query for you. You mentioned your Geo-Cybernetic Atlas protocol. Can you tell us what this Lemurian technology is all about?
Yes, I can. I'd be delighted to, in fact. I was hoping you'd ask. Let's see. From the top, it comes from the pain point that I uncovered. Have either of you heard of Buckminster Fuller? I presume. Yes. Okay, good. So have you heard of the World Game? Okay, well, the World Game was one of Bucky's later proposals, which was more of a statement about lack than any sort of thing he designed from top to bottom, but sort of an identification that came from his Dymaxion map, the dynamic maximum tension principle applied to planet Earth, was that, and this is in the 60s, 70s, that a lot of the world's problems come from being unable to collect the perspectives and share the perspectives of a lot of different stakeholders, whether we're talking about nations, corporations, and people, or various people in the same network, peers. Oftentimes, the spatial component, the map component, is not just missing and therefore a hindrance, but there's something unique about space in that we all share it. I mean, George and Giselle both sort of implicitly state this because they wanted to reclaim some sort of social value, and they always chose land. Not, I mean, it is obvious in their time because 19 out of 20 people were involved in the cultivation of land, but also because everybody can see it, everybody can walk past it. It's now it's impossible to hide because multiple countries have satellites that take pictures of the land every 16 hours. Basically, we all share a truth that we don't all see, and the gap between knowing something on the ground and making the change in policy to fix that is not only it's not a one-time thing. It doesn't just take 15 years for, oh, this, dam is poisoning this thing or whatever, we got to remove it. It doesn't just take 15 years for that to happen. It takes years for any sort of updated information to percolate up. They'll do that once 15 years, and then next year there's another dam, the 15-year clock starts over. It's not that, no, now that we've set up the system, 15 minutes later we can reassess the numbers. And so to me, that comes from a place of confusion that the world of GIS, because it's self fragmented, sort of encourages on accident, because there's no incentive for somebody to come and say, we need to start from the top down. And the way we do maps is from computers, which is borrowing from and directly translating the way we do it with math, which was borrowing and translating from paper maps and star charts. And we've just carried along a lot of craft. And worst of all, we haven't looked back and said, now what's newly possible. And so with this protocol, which I have a first version basically complete now, and I presented it. I sent Josh the video to the regulators of this industry. I presented it to them. Basically, what it allows you to do is make a claim about any space and also time, and prove that space or time so that it can't be tampered with later. So, in a practical sense, if you're thinking about things in economic terms, you can now make tokens of land. And not only, like before, that was sort of possible, but there were a lot of caveats to that made it very hard to argue to other people that you're always treating them fairly. And so I've gone through and made it so that, exactly, make tokens of land. Basically, you can intuitively know if you make a token of this land, it won't be distorted because the area in the token is what's called equal area over the surface. Have you ever seen the Mercator projection where the Earth is, flattened out and Greenland and Russia are huge? That would be the source of conflict, even armed conflict in any sort of system where this takes, over land registers or any sort of national concern. And so you'd need to avoid that. So, I've figured out a way to sidestep that and still create these tile sets, which you can then transact. You can make proofs about. You can now discuss into context, like you mentioned, the various stakeholders in Ireland. You might find that at first you're talking about land use and farmers, but then the very next entity that approaches you once you've got a system in place for a local economy is regulators. And they could either, create a whole new system next to your system for regulation, or they could read yours and build on top of it. And today, that process, is experienced as tension every time you have a small company that wants to buy another small company or partner with them, because everybody's speaking a different language. And there's no one language that everybody would like to speak because they all have trade-offs. So I've sort of gone through the whole world of possible mathematical trade-offs and selected the one that's least onerous and brought it up from, paper and pen to something you can now I can show you a demo in 30 seconds. Select an area of space, make it the tile set. Now you have a fingerprint that can't be tampered with, can now be, prove that it's yours in some sense, whether that's ownership or responsibility or mineral rights, water rights. It's just you know, it's the piece that nobody would build from the perspective of the only way R&D gets done is companies want something, they pay some engineers to put it together, and then they make it a monetary product. This would never grow out of that process, and so that's why I've partnered with open source organizations like the OGC to try to bring it to the world. But I think it's extremely relevant to Economy 2.0, extremely relevant to what you're doing. And I don't want to sound like a salesman. I'm not trying to sell it to you in the sense that there's something to sell. It's more like I want this to be an enabling technology to where you see the problem differently. You say these hard parts that we were ignoring because they seem intractable, those are now just natural parts of the system that we can work with and talk about and make rules about.
Cameron, I want to honor you on your work. Wow, amazing, beautiful. Thank you so much for doing it. I have a query, two queries. One is I'd love to see the demo, and the second is I hear on this island I'm remembering ancient Brehon law. Now, Brehon law is the ancient law that was here before St. Patrick came in the year 432 AD, where most of the land was commons. So the nobles did get land given to them, but they were hospitality houses. And all the cattle, all the fields, all the growing was common land. So the idea of personal property only came in when the Normans came in 1169 AD. Otherwise, it was commons. So what you're doing, and I'm looking for a short name for it, is it the GCAP, the Geo-Cybernetic Atlas Protocol? Or have you got a text
I got
name?
it under the acronym GAP, GAP, right?
Yeah, okay. Go. So does GAP give the capacity for people in a small community, in a county, identify common land and say, here's the fingerprint for the common land, and this is potentially owned by the sacred land itself. Could that be done?
Yes, that's one of the core goals of this is to not just make that, tractable if the government wants to do it, but to make it something that you can do without the government's input. If you're a small town farm community, you don't need to go to the major metropolis and spend 3 to 5 years getting them to understand your plan.
Wow.
You just make a copy of this, a fork of it basically, where you put in your parameters, you specify where in space you are, and now you have all the thing about this that I designed it very specifically to plug into other systems. So you don't have to then think, well, how are we going to manage this? Who's going to run it? What kind of currencies? You can just say, well, we'll just, use a blockchain, a public blockchain for our currency. We'll use, a land register database, but we'll put these in as the registers. You don't have to invent the wheel in any other sense. This just gives you the capacity to step away from somebody is proving this, as a notary or as a government body to say, the land is here. Everybody can see it. And then, especially for democratizing that process of going like from the commons is owned by the town, which is managed by the mayor who's voted for, you could say the commons is managed by the people in the town.
Wow.
Yesterday, Josh was there. I gave a talk about the question of the land value tax in Detroit, and I sort of tried to specifically draw on that thread where eventually the goal is if the system is in place, a lot of this stuff can be automated, not to the point where, an AI is guessing, but to the point where, okay, this parameter is affected by this. There's been less rain, so there's going to be less farm crops. Let's this year turn down the taxation and, tweak the numbers so that the poorest people in town don't end up losing their houses.
Wow. Sure. What you've built sounds extremely important and vital. I see Giri is asking there, why blockchain?
There's no reason not to use a DHT. If you're talking about holochain, that was one of the core concerns is that it should work with holochain. It works with BitTorrent. If you wanted to designate these land register tiles as hashes for the content addressable storage, you could store, for example, the LiDAR point clouds for space. And then if somebody just wants less in
Okay.
the planet, they just want this little bit of it, they immediately know how to get that bit because it's baked into the way that the Earth is split up. Yep, IPFS
Okay,
will work.
so it's not just not blockchain,
No,
but
I try to very carefully keep it from people thinking, oh, you have to use a blockchain for this. It's more like blockchain people are the ones speaking in these terms, but it has nothing to do with ledgers directly.
well, I'm very happy to hear that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one other thing. Yeah.
What if I just started turning on the demo? It'll only take about
Yes,
5 minutes, and
yes,
then you can
please,
see
yes,
visually
please.
what we're discussing here. Might already be on, actually. No. Okay, hold on.
Josh, while Cam's doing that, can you put Cam's email address into the chat just so I make sure I have it? I have a couple of different Cams in my
Sure.
contact book.
So share the screen here. This one. Do you see it?
MSTO, yeah.
Yep. MSTO stands for multi-resolution spatial tile set object. That's called MISTO. Basically, this is sort of a you'll see it visually, and I'll help you understand why it's exciting. But from the perspective of what we've already discussed as far as examples, the hierarchical nature of how we manage land is naturally modeled by the way we manage the tiles. Like one of this is as much a side effect of what I've created as anything. This is Central Park, right, in New York City. I took their actual data and I just figured out which little squares here actually fall in Central Park. And this is a thousand over 12, almost 12,000 little squares. And my system basically takes that and turns it into the smallest squares where the detail is needed, and then the larger squares where it's not. And I don't know if that's necessarily anything more than cool looking to you, but from the perspective of doing the calculations, the proofs, which are sometimes computationally expensive, this, I mean, 91% reduction. It's 10 times faster just out of the gate from this one efficiency boost. And that's only, icing on the cake, because now what you can do is, let's say you have this as a municipal tile set. This is the town. And then you want to say everybody in the town on Tuesday, if they're on Tuesday, they can go to, any of the banks in town and get their currency stamped. Well, there's a part of that statement which is in town, right? Because most of these currencies are not, well, you don't want people in China collecting all the currency and stamping it. And now it has nothing to do with your local town. It's just being speculated on somewhere else. Now you can now gate, the next step in the financial process behind. They have to demonstrate whether it's by somebody else, for example, a notary saying they were indeed here, or some other system. There's plenty of options here. You can specify they have to be in town. They have to be within this square to do this thing. And that comes down to what's effectively a mathematical proof, which is it has many benefits, but it's also one of the ways we keep, AIs or LLMs or just misuse from making this whole thing, into, we'll have days, if we didn't, we'd have days where, all the planes fall out of the sky because autopilot doesn't know about the year 2000 or something, like you want to avoid situations like that in a world where LLMs are already everywhere. You've got to sort of carve some things out and say these things are effortful, difficult, and very rigorously specified so that they don't fly off the rails. And this is sort of that opportunity applied to space, because you can now. I know you're not the audience for the proof part, but this is a genuinely difficult thing to do, and it's not just membership proofs. You can do proofs of, collision between two things, which would be relevant in our case for saying, the next town over, where do we end and they begin? If they're going to have their own currency, we gotta, have that dividing line, which is clean. And in other, systems where the area is not perfect, you might find that in that gray area between the way they describe land and the way you describe land, there's a whole farm or a river or a tree. And now for generations, that's the source of endless conflict, not because it's that valuable, but because the value of fighting over it, at least at the beginning, is more than letting it go. So I think it's hard for me to, just from this one demonstration, show you all of the implications of this, because it is sort of an enabling technology. But it works. And I'm in talks with the OGC, the people who make the standards for the entire Western world, at the very least, most of the world, to have it accepted as a standard, and then anybody can use it.
Wow, you're blowing me away, brother. As it happened, I saw a presentation by Terence Tao last night. You familiar with him?
Yeah.
He was talking about this on the YouTube adjacent video that I saw that Guri was pointing out earlier on. That AI is being used to validate mathematical proofs. So wow, wow.
Yep. This is taking that in the other direction. AI is good at writing proofs
Yeah,
because proofs are difficult and effortful,
yeah.
just like anything. But proofs are a unique output for AI because they're much easier for a human who knows to just look at it and say, there's something fundamentally wrong here, or if there's not, then it should be fine. which is something that AI is very good at fooling you in general. So if you just had that in like JavaScript or something, there'd be 1,000 ways in which it sneaks something in, and maybe it doesn't even know it's done that.
And are you suggesting that this methodology could be used to resolve boundary disputes between people who live on land near each other?
Sometimes those disputes will have to be resolved, by courts, lawsuits, or whatever, because this is really an opportunity to jump from those systems that make that endlessly to one system that makes it impossible. I mean, before this version, the version before this one, just to give you a clue for sort of how difficult this is and where the effort goes, the question of fairness about how to divide those tiles, about where New York City starts and Central Park ends. That question is discussed in the literature endlessly. It's the question of 1,000 fairness algorithms and heuristics about answering the question. I finally found a way where the data structure sort of takes that question away from the human realm entirely, from the developer to the user. Neither of them have to think about that. It just happens because the area isn't distorted. And as long as you say, here's the resolution we're going at, there's always a center dot for every tile. Is that inside or outside your boundary? Okay, then you get it or you don't. And once you set that as your, definition, 400 pages per town of, legal descriptions about how to resolve this all become a one-time thing you have to sort through to get to the other side. And then after that, it's, historical reference. In a place like
Carmen, what's the
Australia, every
resolution?
town has a different way of doing this. And so if you wanted to even just buy property or sell the property you have, it might be a totally different process about who owns what, about what paperwork you have to file, how long it's going to take, who you have to talk to. It's insane. And there's no reason for it to be that way except for there would never have been a point in Australia's colonial history where the government's like, we in advance have anticipated that this is how you're going to do things in these colonial outposts that are one day going to be towns, and we're going to give you those tools. That just didn't happen. And so the opportunity is there to look back and say, if we get that now, if we finish that now, we can have a huge benefit across the world, not just Australia. But Australia is a great example because they have all the land in Australia is technically common trust. The land you own in Australia is just a lease from the government. Nobody except for the government owns land. It's called the Crown Lands.
Cam, what's the resolution of these files?
What do you mean resolution?
Oh, is it like the one I wanted to ask
The
you?
smallest squares, you mean?
Yeah, the smallest square, yeah.
That's a very cool question because it really depends on your goals and the resources you have to apply. Because in theory, the smallest tiles could be in the measure of angstroms. Like it's much
Yeah,
smaller
we
than an
don't. Yeah,
atom if you wanted to. But then you would
obviously,
have, a whole data center just for
it's
one.
obviously obvious. I don't know whether I forgot the name, but people came up with it 10 years ago. At some point, I actually used it. That you got a mapping of cryptographic mapping from any. I think it's about a square yard or square meter or less than square feet, I think. And so every square feet on the globe is mapped into three common words. Don't know. Are you familiar with that
Yeah. What
word?
three words? Yep. Yep. I know that.
Can you remind me what it is because I
So
forgot
what
what.
three words is somewhat it's related to this, mostly in that
Yeah,
every tile on Earth in what three words is translated from an ID to three mainly nonsense words together that designate that
yeah, yeah,
tile,
yeah,
sort of in a
yeah.
way to encourage people to like know intuitively, maybe you're talking about I
Yeah,
live in
but what I
Virginia. Well,
mean
now
is
you'd
that
be talking about I live in 03X1573 or micro calibrated horses.
yeah, but what I meant was that that had a clear resolution of I think a square
It has
feet
a
or
set
something like
resolution.
that.
Yeah, that's one of the restrictions I was trying to get around or really escape entirely. And really, in this system, the resolution is arbitrary. But I have been targeting resolution 17, level 17 in this system, which translates into a square about the size of a business card. My thoughts are, if somebody
That's
is
fine. That's
so
fine.
pedantic that they're going to argue with you and maybe kill you over half a business card, the land tiles were not the problem.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now you answered my question. That's much fine. Agreed. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, okay. I like it. I like it. I think it's And of course, the other thing that immediately comes that if you got that tiling and your the, the two can interplay, you know.
Exactly.
I mean
Perfectly. Like
that's
there's
what you
with
yeah,
the systems today, there's an unrecoverable error whenever you move between Mercator to the circular globe to some other system. There's some percentage of the way you've moved between the two which has to be distorted and can't be undistorted if you go back.
yeah,
This system,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you have to pay that to get here if you have a distorted system. But then once you're in the system and you move between it, there's never any fee for distortion. And that to me was the most important feature for enabling, my goal and my background, which is in simulations. You can't do simulations on a Mercator system if somebody comes with, another map tool. Like maybe they collected all their data in that system, and now you've either got to tell them go back recollect it, or let's sit down and work out exactly how we're going to tolerate this error and only do it once. And if you've already done that, then the next step is to make sure you really only have to do it once by doing it in this system.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, sounds good, very good. Yeah,
I don't want to hijack that. I do think this is directly related to what we're talking about, even on the highest level. For example, I would like, if we had a hypothesis for video, as we might be thinking about this, to have a map for them where not just who's where and where this was recording, but what's
yeah.
discussed. That way, later on, if we have, 100, 200 of these videos, places of interest are going to sort of become nuclear centers. And so every time the Chiemgauer is mentioned in southern Germany, there could just be like a regional button on the map where you click on that and you can see 3 times this was mentioned as the original source of the talk conversation. 2 times it comes in as an annotation. Somebody mentioned it after the conversation, sort of like altimetric, where you can just trace back the conversation about a topic and sort of collect every bit along the way and get caught
Well,
up.
I can I just quickly respond to that? To my well, not disappointment. It was really a revelation that the space. I think maybe that in the geospatial space it's much more constrained than the space of ideas. But it is an interesting thing. So I think spatial is much
Which
more
is
limited.
sometimes a
So you should
benefit, right? Like, Bitcoin is
yeah,
limited to 21 million, and that's what gets people excited about it. The Earth is limited to one Earth. How come we don't have
exactly.
Earthcoin?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah. So you're probably right. In the geo mapping will be much less sparse. But I realized that for many organizations, uh, there are very few things where people actually meet. There are some, and I got to know 10 people just because we have a shared interest and find ourselves on other annotations. That's true, but there are also counterexamples uh, where most of the things I search or I care about, I'm the only one who cares about. So that's
Yeah.
an interesting thing. Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
sort of why, just spatial approaches to this mostly fail because you'll be in your town in Ireland, for example. You might be the only person for 200 miles at all interested in heterodox economics enough to, end up being a point on the map. And so when you have both, you could say there's the topics, of course, and also the
yeah,
spatial context, which in some
yeah,
cases doesn't have anything to do with the chances of bumping into somebody walking across the street and having a compelling conversation with them, and sometimes it does. So there's, spatial context comes into this from multiple angles. And I think
yeah,
if we're talking about discovery, which is sort of the benefit of bringing these things into one place and making them more structured, then having multiple ways to discover something is how somebody gets the full picture, right? I'll
yeah,
look at the map, I'll look at the dictionary, I'll talk to my
yeah.
neighbors. All those things will tell me something different. Sorry, Paul, your hand is up. I don't want to. I don't know if I'm managing this conversation, but I see your hand is up, so I'd like to hand off to you.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to bring in something as, let's say, a use case to see how we can connect both of what Josh is looking for, which is a an extended dialogue methodology for the Economics 2.0 YouTubes. And let's assume that what we recorded 2 weeks ago is the original content. So we have a YouTube and we created a transcript and we created a document. And here we are 2 weeks later. You're now introduced to the dialogue and you're essentially expanding it out in, for me, 9 dimensional ways. Yeah. So for the record, the use case that I'm thinking about, which I think brings back what you're saying, is I'm moving on to a piece of land in May, maybe a month. The piece of land is beside a monastery called Monastuk on Ilan Below, which means the island or the monastery of the island of the living. It was set up by a guy called Saint Finian in the 5th century. Now, Saint Finian was learning from the Gnostic Gospels, which means he was learning from the Desert Fathers.
Yeah.
St. Anthony the Great, because Finian was in Wales for 30 years learning with the Druid. Then he came back to Ireland and then he trained 12 other monks. And those 12 other monks set out within the following maybe 50 years and they set up 100 monasteries between them. Ireland is 3,000 monasteries. Now, what seems to be very important about this particular monastery, which is 2 kilometers away from me, is the physical resonance on the land. So I walked there through a forest. I got dizzy twice. I thought I was going to faint. Okay, so there's some physical boundary around the space. I had to come out of the forest, go round another way, and when I went into the land, I could feel the resonance of this being a very sacred place, a very holy place, maybe even a portal. And we met a guy who looked like he jumped out of the wall. There was two of us there, and this guy just, I mean, fuck, where did you come from? He said, no, I just come here to sit in the trees. So there's something very powerful going on there. So Saint Finian and the monastery is called Monincha, Moninchea, is what the locals call it. So are you saying that with the methodology that you've just proposed, that we could take Monintia and create it as, let's say, a commons or a sacred object, and anybody who mentions it, anybody who's been there, we could create, well, what could we create with this technology that you have imagined based on, let's say, this sacred site called Monintia?
So many things. Maybe the question is, why would you create something like that? Which, hello, Michael. I'll just continue the question. Oh, there he is. Can you?
Hey, Mike, I think the wires got crossed about start time. We've been going for an hour, so um, let's just let what was going on play out, and then circle back to the top.
Can we just check that we got you on audio? You're on mute for now?
Yes, I am. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we got you, Michael. You're very welcome. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Good to see you all.
I would encourage you to play it back to whatever minute this is, 120, yeah, 127 in this recording, because Cam's going to answer something about an ancient monastery in Ireland for which his technology could provide some cosmic response to our colonization on the planet. It's that big.
Yeah, and I just reshared the screen so that I can give Mike, he probably has enough context that I don't have to spend too much time on it again. But basically, I've created a technology where you can, of course, tile the earth many ways. This one allows you to sort of zip up those tiles into the larger ones and get some compression, but especially to make proofs about, this area is within this area or it isn't, etc. for the purposes of things like, tokens and whatnot. So that should help you understand. Paul's asked me a question about a monastery close to where he lives, and the idea sort of to loop in what we've discussed so far about how this enables commons management and new ways of designated and processing commons. The monastery in question is sort of part of a larger network of about 100 monasteries within the actual monastery network of about 3,000 in Ireland. That's probably where I would start to start thinking about the question of, uh, yeah, and we also talked about what 3 words, but the fingerprint of each monastery could become sort of one piece of a shared commons. One of the problems with commons that I think is well documented is fragmentation, where just because most of a forest is still there, if you put roads through it and cut it up, it's a categorically different thing than if the forest was one large intact forest, even if it's 98% the same in either case. So let's say you are the people, the monks managing these lands in commons, you're also managing a shared pool of resources in commons. There's probably informal networks of mutual aid between these monasteries in general, and especially these shared intellectual tradition monasteries. But those are in a lot of ways fragile because they rely on social interaction, which might, decay over time or fall prey to cliches or infighting. And they rely a lot on memory, which is faulty. So, you know, the way we would do it today is like create a company that then issues shares to each of these monasteries and they all get to vote, which works really for only one kind of thing, one kind of goal, the profit seeking venture. And this is almost the opposite. The goal, I imagine, in this case, because these monasteries are hundreds to thousands of years old, they want to stay basically as locked in time as possible, as timeless as possible, as a place of refuge. And so, imagine first off, if this existed for 30, 50 years, some amount of time that there's a sort of time record of this, you could see over time, oh, these monasteries are struggling, and the way they handle it is by selling off lands at the fringe. And so you can see their, tile shifting shape. And, in a world where there's already a mature system of managing of these commons, that might be one of the first signals that something needs to happen in terms of intervention. That's sort of like, all of the crickets dying in some edge of the forest. Okay, that's a good sign that there's bigger problems coming if we don't do anything else. Because once they run out of land at the fringes to sell, they're probably going to start taking on debt. And a monastery that takes on debt, they don't do very good with interest payments because they don't collect a lot of revenue. And so, that's sort of where I would imagine this being most relevant to the monastery. To you at the edge of the monastery, you might be able to say, well, this land feels different to me. So let me go back. Let's now imagine this has been in place for 200, 500 years. Let me go back in time and see when was this land owned by the monastery. And then you can immediately go and see, it was the 1580 when it was sold. Oh, it was because of this war. And maybe it was, there was a fire nearby and it was actually effectively, cleared out by the fire. And that's when it had to become farmland. And who knows? Today, all that stuff is, there's either 1,000 ways to find it, which none of them probably have it, or it doesn't exist and you won't know. And, with this system, it sort of becomes a matter of simple records, ledgers, and things that we already are all familiar with, land.
So is it possible then, thank you for that, is it possible then to create a mutual ledger where all that you've just named is linked, where all of these different monasteries actually become like a virtual bioregion connected by the ancient past, but gathered now by the people who go there because they go there for ceremony, they'll go there for healing, they'll go there for picnics, because they're typically available in the commons or public space or managed by the government as tourist attractions.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you could do that. But, just to loop in the hidden most exciting part of all of this for me, when we talk about proofs are zero knowledge proofs, which are very unintuitive, and I won't go into how they work, but with this system already today, for example, what you mentioned, let's say the people in the surrounding area want to be the community that appreciates this network of monasteries, but you don't want to create, like a loyalty card or membership points. You want something like that that's better suited for this. You could say, well, now what we're going to do is nobody's collecting when you go to the monastery except for you. When your phone goes into the monastery, it generates a proof that you were there at a certain time and place, which you keep locally. So that if you're, about the town and somebody else, you think, hey, this person seems like they also really care about the monasteries. Maybe, in the future, there's pseudo, secret society stuff going on where you're like, there's a secret gathering there and I want to tell him, but I don't want to tell him if he doesn't already belong to this community. Show me your proofs. Among those, if you have them, will be the proofs of this location. But if you don't have them, no details will be revealed. That's just one of many examples of how this might end up, working out. I'm not designing for monasteries specifically, but that's only a constraint on I don't really know the operational parameters of monasteries. There's plenty of ways this is relevant to them.
I see Michael with his hand up there. Yeah.
You're muted. Oh, there you go.
So, Cam, I'm obviously walking into this very late, but I want to share with you something that I've been working on pretty furiously for the past few months, and I'm going to try to distill it down in about 2 minutes. I've kind of come to a crossroads where, in the projects that I've been, following in different people's perspectives regarding things like money reform, which is how I came into this conversation with Josh. I decided to explore a deeper anthropological avenue, meaning the way I now look at kind of history as it relates to the way we see things through a monetary lens is that you essentially had human beings using their memory to establish societies. And for a very long time, 90% of human existence, through basic economic principles, they grew and developed into complex societies. But at a certain point, humans can't hold memory. You can use clay tablets, you can do those things, but there comes a point where it breaks. When governments wanted a way to pay soldiers, they created money, essentially something that can be used everywhere. And that accelerated a fork. That's the fork we've been on for 5,000 years. So I've been very interested in going pre-fork and seeing if we can use modern technology as a way to carry memory forward. And when I reduced this idea down, I realized that it has to be something incredibly sovereign. So what I've developed, and I can test and demonstrate, is you basically have an individual who carries a chain, which is obviously a hash that's secured just like Bitcoin or something. Every time that person interacts with another person, those two people create an attestation that links the two people together. When these two people pass, it's just like a joining of their chains, and then they break apart. So one person has a record of the memory and the other person has a record of memory, but the chains are completely free of each other. And what I'm trying to do is figure out if there's a way to recognize social currency, the money that our current money doesn't recognize. I feel like it's a massive gap. Like 80% of human existence is just unrecognized as human value or economic value. And that's
That's
what I'm
not what
interested
money's
in.
supposed to do.
Yeah,
Money's a
right.
tool
Money
of the
is
state today.
precisely, exactly. So in this structure, which you just described, I discovered something really fascinating, which is, and this goes back to something Josh mentioned once in a conversation about Aristotle, talking about economics as managing the home. When you create this node, um, this is like an individual thing, but imagine people collectively got together in a democratic way and said, you know what, we're going to take these monasteries and we're going to create a monastery group and we're going to create a monastery chain. And you create that chain, it has a genesis, you name it, you describe it, and somebody votes for somebody to manage it. anyone who wants to interact with the monastery chain can now do that. And the contribution isn't the monastery contributing to the people, it's people showing their energy to the monastery. So you get this, it's like inverting a system that we think of, like a government or any organization. I'm the head of the household, you do what I say. In this system, it's we're a household who's contributing to the house, who's a part of the household, who's doing something with the household. What's the household giving in that sense? What's the person providing? You can now see that in this network, but every single thing is literally independent. And that to me is a distinction because the social construct of what people network, you said something about, well, people, one group of people could choose, and that's a very social thing. And so this, I can demonstrate this model at some time in the future. It's pretty much, I'm through, I don't know, version 35, 40 of this, but essentially it's attestations and individuals carry their own memory. And that creates this kind of interesting dynamic with exchange. And Josh, on the money side, I can talk to you about that sometime. The idea of how to understand the value of an exchange. Each act, somebody is identifying effort and the other person is taking the effort, or recognizing that they're receiving the effort, which functions like a ledger. So, but that's my thought or contribution to this.
That brings up a couple things for me. The first thing is, what I've showed you is probably version 60 or 70 of my thing. So don't mistake the polish for luck or genius or something. And it's been a lot of sweat. Um, Besides that, the process you're describing resonates a lot with the holochain system. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I personally am not the biggest proponent of holochain. I'm like, neutral about it, I'll say. For most of the people that know about it, there aren't very many neutral people about it. But the point is, they already sort of grabbed on to this idea of a personal chain, individual chain that's sort of shared locally at will, and then a global DHT that allows you to do things that just the local chains can't, like gossip and whatnot. Uh, yep, yep, and also the neighborhood project. But as far as where what I've showed you fits into that, what you've mentioned, the the social context that you mentioned always has a spatial component, even if the spatial component is the null spatial component where this isn't really happening on planet Earth. There's still the notion of distances where, on Facebook, where they don't really keep track of who's local to you, you still end up getting mostly references and, who's this person? Do you know this person from people local to you because your network is already local to you? And
Yes.
so that realization, that intuition that isn't put in front of your face is Meta slash Facebook's advantage to keep you locked in, because that spatial graph context is one of the most important things you would need to say, I'm now leaving Facebook, I'm going to discover my own friends somewhere else. They're like, no, you're not going to discover your own friends because we didn't give you what you need to discover your own friends.
That's interesting. Can you just, is it HOLO chain or HOLLOW chain?
HOLO. Yeah, somebody put it in the chat too. I just saw it. HOLO chain.
Okay,
Holo.
yeah.
Like
So
Holon.
I would just have one question on that chain. Is this like a distributed ledger online that everyone connects to, or is it entirely uh, just wondering if you have the answer, know that. I'll
The
research
this
this
in
and
question is the gap that I built or Holochain?
no for the hollow chain. Just curious.
Holochain is both. It really it tries to meld the offline and online
Mm.
using cryptographic verification. So there's a DHT which you propagate, your particular local chain to, but with a blockchain, for example, every last change in the whole global network has to be in the next block to be valid. And
Yeah.
that sort of creates a timekeeping pressure, and that's why the block time is like such a big controversial question in every blockchain. Holochain is what's called eventually consistent. They give up on the idea that everybody's going to have the right answer at any given time, and they
Mm,
try to make it so that there's never a point where the wrong answer is in place, where,
yeah.
because you don't
Yeah,
have data from your neighbor, you proceed with the wrong information. That's way more damaging than saying the information is just not here yet.
I see. I'm going to definitely look into that. Thank you.
Gary, I see you waving.
Yes, I think it's the real problem is with all the blockchains and everything, apart from holochain, is that and even holochain is predicated on agents. Okay, so they blur sensibly in some use cases the distinction between a human actor and a computer agent. They have a machinery which works for agents. Okay,
For
whether it's
both, yeah.
human behind or not. And the most important criticism from all, and the other thing is that you don't need a ledger. The whole point of the ledger is not a human interest. Nobody needs a global time consistency. You need consistency within the complete graph that you in contact with. And that's something that Holochain can guarantee. Okay? Local consistency, not global consistency. I mean, the whole mirage of blockchain grown out of the desire of creating central bank digital currencies. Okay, that's all there is to it, and it's just wrong. Okay, that was that. And the holo chain. The point is, what we need is something is when you got not just actor model, which was the best concurrent model ever. We need human actor models. We have to start thinking about it, build systems which gives a special status to the human participant. So
But
that
it
that that
can't, a
that,
system
that,
can't
that
give that. That's
sorry.
fundamentally, this is a much more difficult problem because a system can't say, I'm picking out the humans, like
But
a
no, no,
protocol
but
will
it's
never
not
be able to do
systems.
that.
We need to facilitate human interaction
You're right. I agree with
by
that
the help of
100%.
the machine. That's the whole point. You reverse the whole thing. It's not the machine is the Lord and we are the servants. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
Allow
And
me
really
let me hop.
the way of deciding who's a human or not is an open question, but one of the things
It's
that could
not.
help
It's
us get
not.
rid of
It's
the
not.
non-humans is if people were anchored in their local context. If
Yeah,
there's
that's it.
20 people in your town and you go on Twitter and there's actually 80 people in your town on Twitter, the people in the town could figure out who those 60 people who aren't really there are really quick.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, and I think you're right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this
May
is
I
why
hop in? If I could hop in really quick. Most of the development work I'm doing is actually on that topic because of the problem. I'm open to Holochain, was glancing at it for a moment, and I hear exactly what you're both saying. You can't solve that problem, but you can, as human beings, it's like the way I'm looking at it through my application is like fraud detection. So um, the idea is that human beings have very irregular patterns, and what I am doing is essentially creating several layers that examine the device behavior. So, for example, if your phone measures barometric pressure and it's the same every day, um, that phone is sitting on a rack somewhere. If your altitude changes, if the phone device moves and the accelerometer picks that up in a transaction, it's an indication that a human being was there. If the cell tower noise is different um, between different interactions, it means you were in different physical locations connecting to different cell towers. If your GPS coordinates are different, these all indicate movement. And the cost for a machine to replicate human behavior is like the defense mechanism to that attack vector. So you could build a chain on a computer in a vacuum and present it as real, and that's going to exist that way. But if you create signals that would enable a person to look at the interaction between that other device and say, huh, well, this device is, first off, it's an emulated device. It doesn't come from a real handset, or um, it's never pinged the total network. It seems to sit inside its own network, and I'm like the first person it's ever engaged with. Or um, it it creates signals that are really obvious. And the way I would explain it is like when AI systems attempt to interfere with the AI's general output, the anomaly becomes really obvious. Or back a few years ago when Tesla was really promoting its self-driving, it was creating geofenced areas for some of the people who promoted the service. This was discovered, but other people could not replicate the behavior. And instantly it's identified by the public. So there is no perfect resolution to that, but it is something that if you approach it from that way, you make it so costly. So, for example, in my system, you take a Genesis photo that gets encrypted. That photo records the time your device's system. And then every now and then the person can update their photo. And every now and then you can be prompted to update your photo, say once a year. And it essentially just says, hey, is this a real human being taking a photo in a different place? It's just a little way to say, yep, this is me and I am real. And a device can't really do that. You'd have to manage servers with human beings for what? Like you have to pay a lot of people money to kind of capture. There's more to it, but that's the general gist.
And if you flip this on its head, you mentioned a lot of ways to decide if maybe an account for a new user is a phone sitting in a rack. The best way to decide someone is a human is if they have a long and rich history of many interactions with other humans.
Exactly.
And that's like, something only the government and banks know today because they're the only ones tracking it.
Precisely. Precisely. And the richer your chain, there's patterns to that person's life that are going to be different than others.
Yeah. And so maybe you don't want the world to know.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. The goal being completely free of completely decentralizing your own chain is my objective now. That's what I'm focused on. So a government
More
doesn't know
so
your
than any particular chain or ledger technology, I've actually designed this hand in hand with NextGraph. I know the developer of NextGraph. They've got a grant from the European Union. They might be a better place to start for a lot of this stuff because you don't need transactions.
Oh, interesting.
And transactions are a costly abstraction. They're really the only way to think about distributed systems and not lose your mind, but they're also, if you want them to be a certain way, they can slow you down. So I'll put that out there because
Thank
my
you.
entire system's designed to work mostly with that.
I want to hesitantly redirect the conversation. First, I want to pat myself on the back for bringing Cameron in. That was clearly a good choice. I will also say that I have not understood almost anything that was said in the past 80 minutes, and it's beautiful because um oops, Paul just disappeared.
Well, Paul.
Um, because it's very clear to me that the three or four of you are talking about something that is important and mutually meaningful. That being said, I think the first challenge is to go back to where we started and to create the conversation methodology. And once that is accomplished, then there might be 3 or 4 or 10 or 100 related conversations that need to take place. And as great a conversation as this was today, I didn't need to be here for it. That's that's not a knock at all. Um, but it is a reaffirmation in my mind of the need to get systematic about these conversations rather than just having them whenever and wherever and with whoever happens to be there. Because hearing you guys talk, I know that Toyn von Sambeek, who Cameron, you know, Mike, I think you know, Yuri, you do not, I think, know. He was a guest on the first season of Economy 2.0. He is very much uh, in engaged with all of the stuff that you guys have just been talking about, and he should be a part of this conversation. Um, and therefore, this conversation, in my mind, needs to take place in such a way that Toyn, who happened not to be here today, can be a full participant in it. Um, and so I would say,
So we would also need in your system tags so that Tuan could watch this later and say, "Oh, at Cameron, we talked about this before,
Yes.
and I want to
yes,
add this now and at this point in the conversation."
I've got that on my list of questions is how do people how are people identified, and can we create functionality whereby I happen to be in the synchronous meeting. Toyn wasn't there, but I can call on Toyn, call his attention to this conversation so that we are sure not to miss out on his potential contribution to it because he just doesn't even know that it happened. Um,
And you could make the decision to say, this is a 80-minute video. He's not going to watch the whole thing unless I tell him, watch this segment. Here's what, the comment that I'm looking for you to react to.
exactly, exactly. And that's all that all needs, I think, needs an architecture that does not yet exist. Um, and I think that the reason I asked you, Cam, does this already exist? And seems that the answer was no, it doesn't. That we should start with the prototype that Mike showed us last week, because because it's very simple. It does exactly what it was designed to do, and and that seems to me to be the obvious starting point for all of these conversations, which are going to go off in lots of different directions.
Yeah. Mike, is that somewhere that I can view it later or?
I think I still have it up. Let me just check the server really quick here. Bear with me. I've got a few things going on here. Yeah, it's a really primitive thing, just to make sure we're clear here. But one of the things that I've been doing, Cam, just for your own, is I've just been integrating AI in my development, and I'm surprised. And actually, this is something Josh and I uncovered back in the early days of AI. Was he was trying to create an image, and I said, Josh, you're such a good writer that you might be able to actually generate an image that makes sense with all the different metaphors you want. If I have to make that image, it would take me weeks and weeks of time. And that spawned in my mind that whenever I do a project, I really outline it really deeply. And honestly, it can bootstrap almost any application and put it in a really simple format so fast. It's breathtaking. And so I think, like, to me, the add-on would be, hey, recognize people who've come to the page, allow them to log in, get the access to microphone and video, let people have a conversation. People can tag the conversation in real time. And then if you're recording the video, you could do it literally even while you're having the video. Because we're talking about after the fact. Josh, that was your idea, was like after this conversation, you can then say, hey, oh, I'm going to go back now and tell somebody to do this. I think all of that is most probably really possible without too much. Now, obviously, to really clean it up would take a little bit of work. It's always easy to start something, but I kind of feel like we could do that. I mean, Cam, do you think that's impossible?
I've seen it already done. At
Yeah,
least that
yeah,
part. The
yeah.
One of my favorite things to do with really long videos on YouTube now is to have an AI transcribe the text, the conversation to text, and then I can search it and decide how much of it I want to watch.
Yeah, and we could just plug in. I mean, like I have an account with a couple AI things we could always plug in the an API to listen along with us, So that's most probably something we could do too. And those are three things we should most probably consider. But
Does
it
the
would be
platform
interesting.
assume that there's a way to do this part of the conversation there, or is it just here's the video of the conversation, let's capture it and keep the conversation going?
Well, what I'm thinking is you would then have when the conversation's over, you'd have the recorded file. So unlike Zoom, you just would have everyone's picture, I mean, I wouldn't want to like try to devise new software instantly, but you would just capture everybody's voice and the screen of people participating and a timeline. And I think you would just tag the timeline and the whole screen, all of the participants are just part of the video. And then you'd save that video and in a replayed version, you'd apply the same features to a pre-recorded video. You would just lay it in and you'd still have the ability to tag the timeline. That's
Is
my
that
my
why people were putting uh, context messages in the messaging for this call?
I
Uh,
don't know. I think
no,
that's just Paul's and Guri's methodology.
yeah, it's just our practice that we flag it in the chat so that we can look at it later. Again, we have the transcript, so we can do that as well. But I'm interested, Michael, can we take this video, this one here, and offer it up as the original artifact for you to practice that or to set that up as a demo?
Well, and to be honest, I personally don't use Zoom a lot. So if you can download the meeting as a video file, then we can upload it into the test and use that as our basis to start.
Yeah, so I can download this and then I can upload it to YouTube and then get you a link.
No, don't even upload it to YouTube. Just send me the file and I'll throw it on the server for now and link it.
Okay, and then I think what might that be doing then is serving Josh's requirement for extending the conversation for this actual dialogue which took place.
Yes. Yeah, the goal would be for that to be the case. And we could fiddle with that, Josh, during the week or if kind of on our own side, just kind of work out the details. But yeah, I think we can get a very primitive version of this rolling. We already have a very primitive version, but um, cleaning it up is remarkably easy as well nowadays.
I would suggest another a future meeting as being the I'm going to use a term that I don't even know if it's the right term, and you're all going to laugh at me if it's not. The genesis block of what we're talking about, because I don't think that this meeting that we've just had is the correct genesis block um, for this global conversation paradigm because it got so specialized and it's going to be incomprehensible to 9 out of 10 people. Um, and therefore, I think that the Genesis block, am I using that term right?
Just
Doesn't
the
matter.
initial, exactly, the idea of like whatever first video we put out for everyone to kind of practice on and
Right.
experience the idea.
It needs to be extremely accessible. And this conversation has not been extremely accessible. This conversation would be a hugely valuable branch off of the kernel. I don't think we've had the kernel yet. I think we need to plan the kernel. And it would start, in my mind, with a restatement of the problem and the mission. So I would propose that we plan that next.
Just a few minutes ago, you were patting yourself on the back that you invited me, so this is your fault.
You've gotten really quiet, Cam.
Sorry.
Your video's
I was just making a wisecrack.
It's your fault, Josh, is what he's saying. You brought him in, so.
um, Cam, please. There's no fault here. I want to place here on the record that when I heard the technical conversation elevating, I was also terrified that I would not understand it. However, and Josh, this may be interesting. I stayed with the two men and I witnessed an evolution. Because what I ended up getting a sense of was the spatial relations issue that Cam was bringing in, and then Guri was bringing in his part, and we had our questions, and I brought in a 5th century monastery. And now Michael turns up at a different time zone than the rest of us, and quite quickly comes in and we elevate the technical conversation again. And I'm not a technical person, but my heart is beating so fast. I think we are finding a genesis of which there will be, as you say, many branches. So I hear you that in order to make it accessible, but we can also have a dry run from this video call as well, so
For
that
sure, just as a
when we
test.
meet, yeah, when we meet in 2 weeks' time for the planned accessibility dialogue, we will be able to even maybe show a demo. So absolutely yes, and
So, Mike, maybe your homework could be to take the video file of this meeting and
Hmm.
use it as in place of the bunny video that was
Thoughtfully
that
put in by AI.
that confused me. I was like, why am I watching a video of a bunny? Uh, this will using this as the raw material will make it a lot clearer that this is about a conversation paradigm. Um,
Of course, of
and
course.
and so maybe next time is where we push the record button and we state at the very top the the problem, the mission, the proposed solution, and then have in-depth conversation in which we each come. I've got a list of 8 to 10 specific questions or issues or proposed additional functions that the thing does not yet have, um, in order to generate the platform, if it is even a platform or application or whatever it is, and that conversation, it will be a forever conversation. It will not have an end. It will be ongoing, and the platform itself may continuously evolve and improve. But it will be clear when we get to a point where it is good enough to initiate season 2 of Economy 2.0, or the brainstorming session around formalizing the proposal for the natural economic system. And then this will become a tool that each of us and anyone else who wants to get involved can use to facilitate their own conversations, and this, could become a real platform, but a platform in a different sense than YouTube is a platform.
Yuri, did I see your hands?
Yes. I think there's two tracks as I see it. The Economy 2.0 is on YouTube. It's YouTube itself has the features. Once you log in, you can create clips. So you can just take the best clips, create a list of that, and do and so that's one level. The other thing is that in economy tool or any good YouTube podcast or whatever, all the conversation is locked up in the chat or just comments. And so if you can only do it, if you can achieve to move the commenting to an annotation space, which is already done. You can via hypothesis anybody can annotate any videos on YouTube. So we are open to the whole world. It's not it's using standard things, uh, and then with the annotation you should be able to link personal spaces. This is the bit that I'm working on. So imagine that thing that you have annotations. The annotations give you also a way of adding comments, not in the comments section, but threaded conversation on the margin. That's also built into hypothesis. I mean, the only thing you have to do, you have to sign up because that's the way it is. But even that can be obviated later. But what I'm trying to say, uh, I really think that it is very important to get. That's a very valuable contribution in itself, because there are lots of conversations which any channel could use that, you know, and nobody provides that so far. So I think that's one. The second, this is something that with Gian we wanted to do the same that you discussed. That yes, even in a code, we should be able to play this annotation game. We should be able to branch off conversations and real time. I think that's actually because at the moment we restricted into that you can make a comment there. Why couldn't we have threads around? And so I think that's the kind of thing that Michael uh, could actually really do, sort of new affordances, which 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 uh, which can obviously use the use offline or not in real time conversations. But I do want to say that it's worth considering keeping as much compatibility or building on what is already available for podcasts. So I'm talking about economy 2.0, because I think that's a really rich conversation, which should have this growing potential. Okay, Wakaj, okay. Sorry, I have to turn on the heat here. Just a second.
Mike, did you find your bunny video? Could you show it to Cam?
Yeah, let me check and see if I can. Sorry about that. I mean, I don't even know if just to be very clear, I sense that the version we did, let me find it here. Okay. Give me a moment.
Trying to tune your camera, Cam.
Yeah, I'm the only thing in view and I'm out of focus. So there we go. Now that I stopped trying, it's done it.
Oh, the AI heard you. So while you're getting that, Michael, so the next time we meet in 2 weeks' time, we'll do a general dialogue where everybody's presenting their thoughts and feelings about the intention, the mission together, and then we can see where we're at with whatever has been created between now, using this as a demo, and where we get to in 2 weeks. Is that what I'm hearing? Any
I
addition to that?
I think so. Josh, I think I have to. I can't demonstrate right now. Just the video is not loading. I don't know why. It might just not be in the same place it was originally stored. So I would just have to replace the video in some way. Um,
It's not
If it's
critical because I think I explained it. It's so basic that I think I explained it enough that Cam
hmm,
will understand without seeing it, and he will see the next version of it in 2 weeks when this
yep.
meeting becomes the raw material for the demo.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that because it was literally I just put everything up for that meeting, and I think, but we've basically got a situation just so Cam, it's basically the application is you upload or add a video, and as the video plays, you can flag a moment, so you can be watching. Let's say you're sitting there and watching the whole video, you're like, oh, that's something I want to come back to. You can just flag that moment. Video keeps going. You can add a label to the flag if you want, if it's like a relevant thought you can contain, in a moment. And then you can also stop at anyone's pre-existing um, conversations and add to those at any time. So the idea is you could sit and just watch through the whole thing, take it in, and make little notes to yourself as you're going, and then come back and then start a conversation or just go into somebody else's. That's the general premise of it. And those just obviously are iterated through nested conversations that I would assume go as deep as they need to. So, but that's the general principle of it.
yeah.
But yeah, we'll have something workable for the next meeting.
Are you interested in putting the source somewhere? I'm not, just so I could
Yeah.
try to run it perhaps, or if I have a quick
Yeah,
question
but
about like, is it managing with this library or that library, then I can just look it up or
yeah, why don't we do this? If it's okay, let me polish it. Literally, it's just like one iteration or two. Maybe I think I did like three versions of it. Let me just refine it and get it to a place where I'm sure it's functioning because right now I can't literally play the video. So, and then I can share it absolutely, if not at the next meeting, and that way you can have it. It's I mean, AI produces things really rapidly, so I'd be happy to share whatever. It's fine.
okay.
Yeah.
Have we done enough for today, gentlemen?
I would like to just uh, propose that we ask everyone here if there is anyone else who's not here who really should be here next time to have this level one conversation be as good as it can be. I am thinking that I would like to invite Toyn, who I mentioned, who some of you know and some of you don't. Is there anyone else who any of the four of you think it would be really better to have as part of the next meeting so that we can reach out and coordinate?
No,
That's a beautiful
can't think of
idea.
any.
I'm happy to act as postmaster if you want to send me emails. I'll convene us all into this dialogue. We'll come into this space if you're okay with that. I can record it, which means we'll get the video, the transcript, and the audio. Is that all good? And I just want to honor, Josh, that what you're talking about is placing whatever we're doing into the commons, which is the entire idea in the first place. So, For me, I'm checking it with great gratitude to be here. I'm glad it went technical. I was able to hold on to the balloon and fly up to a 5th century monastery 2 kilometers from where I live, to a guy who was reading the Gnostic texts and teaching the ancient monks of Ireland before the Vikings came. So I'm feeling very grateful. I'm out for now. Thank you all.
Oh,
Gear.
also, can we talk
Yeah.
about the time? Uh, this time was earlier than I thought it was going to be and is not ideal for me. Could we do it an hour later than we started today?
The time that Michael came in at.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Paul, Paul, I put my other email in because the personal email is getting full. That's something I pay for. So if
Okay.
you all these conversations, if you could use that, that would help.
Okay.
Yuri Leisure, Moscow, because
Actually, before we sign off, let me say one last thing. Yuri, I have a hard time hearing you, and
oh,
I want to hear every word you say, and I hear the others in this conversation better than I hear you. Um, I don't know if perhaps you might have a microphone or a headset or
no,
something that
it is the problem is that okay, let's uh, I lost the connection to the other laptop, so that's why it's bad now.
okay.
So the next time it won't be. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So can we check out then? So I'm checking out with
Sure.
joy, gratitude. See you in a couple of weeks.
Take
Guri,
care
can you
all.
check out? Guri, can you check out?
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for this. That it was a bit too technical, but it's very great to be able to talk to people who actually understand these words, and it's very interesting to see how you see it. So I really enjoy that thing, which that. So I think these are all everything is deeply intertwined and interconnected. This isn't optional. The further you connect, the better it gets. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm
Josh, can you check out?
All set.
Would you like to say anything else? How you doing as we check out? What's come up for you? What did you learn?
I think I've said everything I had to say. I'm excited. This is this is great. This is clearly going in a good direction, and I don't think anything stands in our way except our own imaginations.
Thank you. Michael and Arunima, whoever that is.
That's my wife. I don't know why that shows up. It must be from other meeting. It was most probably from lifeboat stuff. Um, yeah, I would just say I'm very grateful that Josh invited me to be a part of this conversation. And Yuri, I just want to say that I think this thinking about annotation is such an important idea, and I can't really say that enough. And I'm just excited there's so many people interested in finding a way to solve these types of problems and make real connection better and more understood. And so I'm just grateful for this meeting. And of course, Cam, you being here too. This is great. So it's my second time getting to watch and listen to you. So that's awesome.
Great. Cam, take us home.
Me, I'm grateful to everybody who came and thought of me today. I think this is definitely a conversation that I can, benefit from and enjoy and be part of. So, looking forward to where it goes from here. Sorry if I ended up taking over the conversation a bit. That's not my intention, but I'm always happy to share what I have. So sometimes I need to be reined in.
In dialogue, you won't be reined in dialogue, brother. You'll be let loose. We will tie a rope to your helium balloon only if you want to come back. Otherwise, you can go where you want. But I'm very
Okay, well,
grateful.
I
Yeah.
promise to take you to a new vantage point then.
Beautiful. Yeah, because what I think you're pointing to, Cam, is a reenactment of the commons at a GIS level, which I have never heard anybody talking about. I've never seen it possible, and I think you're going to give us an opportunity to create a layer of peace on this planet, which is about 2 feet off the actual land, because it's going to be your tiles. And my sense is that it's a beautiful opportunity to place the commons at a GIS level that it's never been at before. Well, it was before, of course, the humans arrived. But using our technology in a benign and beautiful way is it's a great honor to be involved in all of this.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you, brothers. See you soon.
Thank you.
Send around the links.
Care.
Thanks,
Bye, Paul.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Cheers.